Welcome to episode 344 of the DFO Rundown presented by Bet365. Download the app today and use the promo code NATION to get in on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Monday Night Football. Also, a Stanley Cup rematch, Florida-Edmonton from last year. Tonight on the Prime Monday on the NHL. As I'm Jason Gregor, we welcome in Frank Saravalli on no shortage of storylines this weekend, Frankie. There is lots going on, and
none of it positive, really.
No, well, there's some, but you're right. A lot of the big storylines are. Well, let's start in New York, where the city that never sleeps. I'm wondering how much management coaching is getting sleep right now. They're right in the ditch, and did not look even any better at all against the Blues.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can pinpoint for this team the turning point of this season. November 25th, the report comes out that Chris Drury has let all 31 other GMs know that Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba are available and that he's open for business. He actually sent the message on Sunday, the 24th. So it was interesting. It took a day to get out. And since that moment in time, the Rangers are 3-7. And you can blame the players, you can blame the coach. I would argue that the general manager certainly has no shortage of blame on his plate because this team has been in a spiral since. It's probably a lesson on many levels of just how the modern day pro athlete maybe doesn't respond to things like that anymore. And in fact, has gone the other way. All of that said, as tough as this has been and how there surely will be more bodies thrown on the tarmac based on the way Jim Dolan runs his operation in New York, the longer this continues, in a very odd way, if I'm Chris Drury, I like finding out about this now as opposed to later, if that makes any sense. If this is how your team's going to react, and they're going to go from 12-7-1 to 15-14-1 with the blink of one message and some reporting, maybe this team doesn't have what it takes. Is that a crazy alternative view?
Yeah, well, I wonder if the underlying issues, like when you listen to what Jacob Trouba had to say when he got traded, and just, there seemed to be more drama around a team, Frank, that's pretty good record, like a pretty competitive team. And so I think there are times where you never want to be completely, everybody's singing Kumbaya together 100%, but I don't think you want self-induced drama. And a lot of this seems to be a little bit self-induced about a lot of the stuff that was tried to be internal has all gone public and it just really hasn't worked, right? Like, to me, there seems to be a lot more drama around this team than there should be.
Well, yeah, there is for sure. But here's the part we can't calculate is how much of that drama had existed behind closed doors that just never made it out before this memo was sent out.
Yeah. Okay. So even if it's behind closed doors, you're wondering, like, why all the drama? Hey, you can have high expectations. You're not the only team in the league that has high expectations, but why so much drama around it? Like, you'd reported that, hey, they were trying to make trades in the summer and none ever came to fruition. So if you're the GM who's going to push for it, then you better make some damn trades. You can't kind of help stir the pot of the drama.
But he did
nothing.
He of the two players he sent out, he moved on from one of them in relatively short order.
Yeah, but you said, didn't he want to do more? Like, he wanted to get younger and quicker in the offseason and none of it came to fruition?
Yeah, and to be fair, this downswing too. So since this became a story, it also just happens that Igor Shesterkin has an .893 save percentage in the 8 games that he's played since that happened. And Jonathan Quick has not been much better.
No, and which is why I said earlier in the year, I love goaltenders. I'm very hesitant to want to pay long-term huge money for a goalie because it's the most volatile position in sports. It just is. Like, can you think of any position that's more volatile than then that position, when you look at the importance it has in the outcome of games.
Yeah. And Jonathan Quick. So Shesterkin's 893 and Quick is 857.
Yeah. Their team defense isn't great either.
No, it's not. And look, like you could play on a loop some of those Zibanejad turnovers and the other issues that they've had. And some of them like look scary similar, making the same mistakes. Yeah. So then let's bring us to the next part of the conversation. How much of this falls on the coach?
Yeah, well, I think to me, this is a combination of a lot of things. Manager, when you mentioned, sending out the everybody's on the block, the coach for the team defense, and the players, because the players ultimately still play the game. And when you have the talent level top to bottom of New York, I don't think you should be this bad. Now, they might not be Stanley Cup contenders because they're missing a piece or two, okay? But when I look at their roster, Frank, they shouldn't be allowing this many quality chances. Like, Zibanejad, the coach doesn't coach Zibanejad to turn the puck over in the sense he's turned the puck over in a fashion he's gone about it the last 3 weeks. So yeah, it's a combination. But you and I both know there's 23 players. There's one GM and one coach. It's a lot easier to get rid of the single than it is the multiples.
So what do you make of the Capo Caco healthy scratch? Laviolette explained it as wanting to get, quote, fresh legs in there.
Yeah. Well, I look at Capo Caco. Where is he on the list of important Rangers this year? Is he even he's not in their top 7, not in the top 9. So I get that he's a former high pick, whatever. What is he really? He hasn't been bad, but sometimes you gotta, you got to send a message. And I haven't stared at Caco's game, to be honest. Like, there are other guys I think you could make an argument for that have maybe made more egregious errors for sure. But maybe Capo Caco just how many points does he have? 14?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is 3 more than Chris Kreider.
Right. Yeah. So I think
Filipino.
Yeah. There's lots of other candidates. So I would say this might be the start. And the next game, if it's someone else, then I think you get players' attention. But I've always argued that when you want to bench, like coaches, lots of time, they're number 6, 7 defense. Oh, geez, we lost a game. Let's switch him out. Or let's switch out our 4th line. Those guys are easy. Capo Caco is on a higher rung than that, so it gets more talk. But you probably could go higher if you really want to send a message as a coach that this is unacceptable and send it directly to the players who aren't doing their job.
So let's try and diagnose this then. So we've talked through the players, we've talked through the coach and the manager and the goalies. What would you do?
It's a really good question. The fact that it's Nolan, I think, Frank, anybody could be on the chopping block. Well, except Shesterkin. He just signed a massive deal. He ain't going anywhere, right? Adam Fox isn't going anywhere. There's certain guys, the bread man. No, but I don't know. If I had to weigh between the coach and the GM, I'm not sure one would weigh. I would be more surprised by either one at this point. I wouldn't be shocked if he went all the way up to management just based on the history of how they've ran their organizations. What do you think?
I would do nothing.
Okay.
I know that sounds...
Which might not be a bad move either.
No, I know that sounds like a cop-out, but I think the poor run in net, which has been exacerbated by some of the sloppy defensive play and turnovers, that probably levels itself out. And I'm not saying the Rangers by any means are a perfect team or that they are the team to beat in the East or anything like that. But maybe a coaching change works. Maybe that's a possibility. Maybe that happens. But I think the easiest thing to do is just find a warm body somewhere and throw them on the tarmac. And I just don't know that makes sense. And I think giving this team a chance to reboot over the holidays when everyone leaves the rink, facilities are closed the 24th, 25th, and 26th. Everyone goes home to their families and has a good chance to take a step back and think about this. I think not all that dissimilar to the way I felt about the Bruins at the start of the year, which is they're a good team who's playing poorly. I think the Rangers are much better than this and should be an easy playoff team. So stay the course. I'm not saying playoffs, if we're thinking big picture, 30,000 foot view, I'm not saying playoffs are the end all be all. I'm just saying in a year in which you have Shesterkin and Panarin and all these other guys, to throw the baby out with the bathwater this year to just make some moves that might tank this even worse. I don't know that makes the most sense right now.
Oh, desperate trade. I would agree with you on that. And I can get on board with the argument of, hey, what are they? 1 point out of a playoff spot? Like, yeah, they've played 10 terrible games. They're 1 point out of a playoff spot. It's not like they got to go on an unreal run here and to get themselves back in it. They just kind of got to they're in the ditch right now. Kind of got like the back end is skidded in, Frank, and now they're spinning their wheels. Can they get out? And sometimes you can save it, or you try to turn against it and boom, now you're all four wheels are in the ditch. And I think this week, probably sometimes patience can be good for sure. But I think they're going to have to decide, because to make a coaching change, I'm always do you believe the coach isn't getting the most out of his players? And if so, then why? Are the players, because to me, it can't just be, well, the players don't like the coach. But
that's not even how I look at it.
But I'm just saying, for me as an organization, I would look and say, because it's way too easy sometimes to just players don't like the coach. That's the coach's fault. Like that's become a little bit too easy in NHL. Like, look how many coaching changes we've had in the last 20 months. It's ridiculous. So I would want to do a deep dive. But do you think the Ranger organization, ownership in this case, is patient enough to do that?
Well, historically, we've got decades of evidence here. The answer is no. Like, this isn't a new thing. But how many? So the way I would look at the coaching change is his message getting through, and why not? I don't know that anyone's message is getting through right now. I think this team is so twisted in their own heads that I don't care who it is. If you're thinking too much while you're trying to play, I just don't know how you can be successful. And I think everyone's overthinking it right now. So the next part of the coaching question would be, who am I bringing in? Because it's not about voice. It's, do I have someone better available? Maybe you do. Maybe I'm just throwing out a name. Maybe it's Joel Quenneville. Maybe it's someone that you have sitting on the bench that you're like, yep, this guy is going to be the game changer for us. Then I could see it. But just doing it to do it, I don't know that that's going to work. You better have the next guy lined up and ready to go that's going to take this team to the next level. And short of that, I think we're reaching a natural inflection point. We're only a week away. You've only got to survive one more week before everyone gets a break and gets away from each other.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
That's pretty powerful. Not a lot of leagues or sports have that built into their schedule.
Now, so you've got the Rangers who, before this 10-game fall, they were 12-7-1. They were the number one wild card team with 25 points. But if you went by points percentage, they were actually higher. So they were third in the Atlantic. At that exact time, Frank, the Buffalo Sabres on November 26th were in a playoff position. They sat in the second wild card spot. Since then, they haven't won a game. They're 0-7-3 in their last 10. They have now dropped all the way from being in a playoff spot to sitting in 29th place in the NHL. To me, that's like the Rangers have went 3-7, but they're only 1 point out of the playoffs. The Sabres have pretty much gone 0-7-3. And I think you can argue their season's pretty much over for their chance to make the playoffs now. Like, they got way too many teams to climb, and it doesn't look like there's any end in sight. What do they do?
So I'm not willing to say their season's over yet, because unlike the West, where Nashville is in dead last and they're 13 points back of a playoff spot, I don't care how many teams you have to climb over. You saw how quickly they tumbled. And yes, I know how it works in the NHL, how hard it is to make up ground, but they're only 6 back, and it could be a maximum of 8, depending on games played.
Yeah, with 51 games left, though.
6, yeah, but 6 points to make up over 51 games. I mean, we've seen teams do way more than that. So, you may be willing to say it. I'm not. But I don't think their season's over.
Let's say it's because Ottawa right now, no one's on pace for a huge number. So, but if no one's not, like, the 8th seed isn't going to be an 88-point team, right? Like that's a massive.
I don't know. It was historically low last year.
Yeah,
it was. It was a pillow fight. That's what we were calling it. Remember?
Yeah. No, last year it's fair, but even then, in the
91
fight,
got you in last year.
Yeah, 91. So still not 88, which is what it is now. So let's just even say, argument's sake, and say, okay, 91 points. They've only got 26 points. So they still have to get 65 points just to get to 91 in 51 games. Like they got to win out of 51 games. They got to win what, 30, let's say 32, and then 2 in overtime. Like
it's 104-point pace. It's 104-point pace the rest of the way to get to 91.
Yeah. Sorry, Sabres fans. And they did this a few years ago. Remember when they had a great start and then they lost 11 in a row? Like, a 10-game stretch can crush you. And it looks like what it has for a team that's not good. Elite teams like, Edmonton overcame it. And I know there's St. Louis, so someone's going, hey, what about the Blues? And yeah, okay, there's always an outlier. But when I look at the Sabres, a team that's missed the playoffs 13 years in a row, there's nothing on that roster that makes me believe they can go on a massive heater and win 32 or 33 out of 51.
Well, here's the difference, though. We know it's not going to be the coach, or at least we don't think.
Yeah, Lindy Ruff just got hired.
He just got hired. So if you were Kevin Adams and you went to your owner and said, I'd like to fire the coach that I just hired, he would say to you, well, here's your pink slip as well, sir. So that isn't really on the table. I mean, this team has needed a trade for weeks now.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is Kevin Adams likes his players too much. I've been told that there are a few managers around the league that they feel like they've made reasonable offers to Adams and have been sort of quickly rebuffed for some of his players. And I get that. Like, everyone's going to be vulture hunting right now, and they're going to say, hey, let me take Dylan Cousins off your hand. Well, yeah, that is, everyone knows that's going to be expensive. But point being, not every player on a bad team can be expensive. And at some point, even if you like the players individually, the collection, the sum of the parts, you have to recognize that it's not working. And I don't know, at least according to managers that are in conversation with him on a weekly basis, I don't know that recognition has set in. I really don't.
It's a fair point. So what do you do if you're a Buffalo? Because if you get rid of the GM, how does that really help your on ice product? Unless you're saying you get a GM and now he's going to make some moves.
Well, you'd have to get a GM that's going to make some moves, but beyond that, you'd basically have to recognize that you're punting on this season if that's the case. Very likely, right? If you begin to conduct surgery, first off, not an ideal time of year to do it. I mean, the ideal time to conduct surgery is in the off season.
Yeah.
But if you're doing that, the chances are that it's not going to you're not going to snap your fingers and put together some magical combination and it's all of a sudden going to work. So I'd say you, at least right now, you have to allow him the opportunity to make a move that can try and dig this team out.
Yeah, what move is that, though?
They got to defend better. Cannot.
But But if I look at their top four,
it should be good based on
it's got to be
that.
their forwards then. Their forwards aren't helping enough in the D zone.
No, I don't think so. I think it's exactly the top 4D that I'm not saying we've overrated them, but that's possible. I think the actual play of some of those players, and I don't want to pinpoint anyone specifically, but I would argue that their name value and brand recognition around the league has been at a higher level than their play.
Owen Power.
Anyone in that top 4D core.
Yeah. So they can play better. Fair. I don't know. Their offense got to be better. Like there's a lot of areas of that team that's got to be better. And then here's the thing. Here's the risk now, Frank, for the Sabres. You've missed the playoffs 13 years in a row. You've lost, you've lost 10 games in a row. I know it's a 10-game winless streak, not a losing streak as a loser point, but we all know they're winless in 10 games. And you could make a move to give you a chance to salvage on a low percentage chance to make the playoffs. And that to me is going to be the challenge is they can't make a trade, Frank, that we talk about in 18 months and say, whew, they really lost that trade. You know what I mean? Like that, because now that just digs you deeper in the hole. That's their challenge now is they got to make a trade that's okay. It's a trade that if it works for both teams, fine, but they can't make a trade now that turns out to be we lose this trade. Like they lost the Jack Eichel trade, right? Like they lost the Reinhart trade. And like those are significant losses.
But don't you think that's where some of the trepidation comes in if you're Kevin Adams? Like, hey,
potentially, yeah.
I don't want to make the next Sam Reinhart trade.
Yeah, well, paralysis by analysis kills you even more. Bang on.
To be like, and again, I don't think anyone should absolve Lindy Ruff here. And frankly, should absolve Kevin Adams for his role in hiring Lindy Ruff. I don't know how anyone could have possibly watched the New Jersey Devils last season, or frankly, a couple years, and said, this team plays a way that I've got to have their coach and not interview anyone else. Like the fact that happened and you brought him back without opening up the floor, without learning, without going through the process to even steal information from other. And I'm not saying when I say this, I am not advocating for a sham process solely for fact finding and information finding purposes. I think that's bullshit and a waste of people's time and emotional capital. But the fact that you didn't go through that and even learn more about your team from outsiders of what they think about your team is borderline unforgivable.
Yes. What you don't know. That's just a fact. And there's lots of things might not know. And you're too close to it. Maybe you're blinded by it, but it's 100%.
You live in an
valid.
echo chamber.
Yes. You're 100% valid on that. So, and that to me, like Frank, to not make the playoffs 13 years in a row is not just one or two errors. It's a lot of constant mistakes. Like you look at their whole management team. Adams gets hired. He doesn't have a lot of experience. Well, then you got to surround him with other guys with loads of NHL experience. He should have had a real veteran assistant GM who's just there, because he can be get a consultant. I don't care. Get somebody in there who's got experience in the management role that you could talk to about making trades and, okay, what do I do in the coach hiring process? Like that. So to me, there's lots of inexperience in other levels of that organization that have now become pretty obvious.
And now what? Again, you can't fire him. I mean, I guess you could, but can we all now concede that was a mistake?
Well, looking like it. Yeah.
I mean, listen to Lindy.
Well, it was a mistake not to interview anybody else for sure. If they interviewed lots of others and they realize, hey, Lindy's the best guy. Okay. But we'll never know that because you didn't do it.
But like, did you listen to Lindy after the game yesterday? I mean, the quotes are like, they're staggering. Here's what he said last night after the game. I'm almost lost for words, obviously. It's on me to solve this. This is the toughest solve I've been around. It is on me to get these guys in the right place and win a hockey game and nobody else. Just me.
Yeah, I don't mind. Like he's taking the bullet. He's saying, hey, he's a veteran
I get
guy.
it. I'm not, but this is a 30-year vet at a loss for words.
Yeah.
after being at a loss for words 8 months ago in New Jersey, or whatever, however long ago it was, 10 months ago. I'm sorry. I didn't get it then, and I don't get it now. I really don't.
Well, now speaking of coaches' post-game comments, I'm sure you've seen Rick Tocchet in Vancouver, where he's, man, we're not like Edmonton. We don't have two guys that can take over the game. And right now we got too many guys who aren't emotionally invested in the game. Kind of summarize what he said for the Canucks, who had, they'd shut out the Panthers the game earlier 4-0. But what do you make of that, where, he's just saying they got too many guys who aren't emotionally invested?
I think that's absolute BS. Like, it's great that Rick Tocchet said it and wants to take the bullets, but it's not on the coach to get the players jacked up to play.
No, that's what he's saying, though.
That's not what he said. If you read the full quote, he took full responsibility for it, saying it's the coach's job to do that. I think that's not correct.
No, that's bunk, 100%.
So he can take the blame if he wants, and you can make the Edmonton comment if you want. But last time I checked, the Vancouver Canucks have 2 40-goal scorers and 200-point players. Just at forward. Okay? Yeah. So where are those guys?
Well, it's an obvious statement, but even Elias Pettersson, he's best. We all know he's a rung or two below McDavid and Draisaitl. I think we'd all agree with that, right?
No, but it's not like you're playing with like a next. You're not playing with an AHL roster here, going up against the big dogs. Like it's up for your top players to be your top players.
Yeah, like him. See, Frank,
Quinn Hughes is the only one who's done it this year.
Him saying, "I know it's on me to get more out of them," is the way to not throw them under the bus. When anybody who's played the game, anybody who watches the game knows the coach. The movie scenes. Any given Sunday, the coach comes in, he's got this rah speech, but even in his speech, he's like, "I can't do it. You got to do it for you," which is true. Everybody knows it. And coaches don't have these rah speeches 80 times a year. Okay. It doesn't happen. So you're bang on. And I think Rick Tocchet, by him saying, "Oh, I've got to do it," is okay. That's completely not throwing guys on the bus. But the fact that it's out there, he's basically, it's the way to veil it, to say, hey, we got too many guys here that just simply aren't ready to play at the level necessary to compete every night in the NHL.
Yikes.
So I wonder, you've got a management team who's the opposite of Buffalo. They're not afraid to make moves. We've seen it, right? Like last year, they made a lot of good moves during the year, right? Mm-hmm. For a while, they'd made more trades than the rest of the NHL, I think up until like December, if my memory is correct. So you know what? Their management team's not afraid to make a move. You look at the blue line, and obviously Hronek's injury is hurting them, no question. Like that's a team to me that's ripe to try to make a move here too. And a management team that's not afraid to do it. Do you see one coming?
I think they have to, as aggressive as they've been. Oh man, no one's gonna like my conservative takes today. But
what's going on with you?
Well, because I think we all root for chaos, but I don't know that we fully realize how chaotic the season has been.
Yeah. But just look at their blue line right now. Do you think it's good?
But that's where it is. That's what I'm saying. It is clearly the blue line, and it's been the blue line since the opening part of the season. And I think the Canucks got a bunch of player evaluation things wrong this past summer, starting with Vinny Desharnais and continuing on through Forbort and elsewhere. They don't like. I ran into them in the first couple weeks of the season, and they were saying then, we just don't move the puck efficiently enough. And that's exactly what, like, it's the non-negotiable that Rick Tocchet has, is fast out of our own end. Got to move the puck quickly. And they don't do it. Well, at least not consistently enough. And then missing Phil Hronek for a couple months just further, it compounds the problem.
Yeah.
So I think they need to keep their powder dry a little bit until we get a better sense of what this overall D market looks like. Like, see, I would have actually liked Cam Fowler in Vancouver. I thought that would have made some sense.
Were you surprised at how little they had to give up?
Yes and no. Like, I'm surprised that there wasn't more of a, and perhaps Pat Verbeek did this behind the scenes, but that there wasn't more of a full-fledged, okay, every team in the league that's interested in Cam Fowler, get your interest registered, and like, it can't be a bidding war, because he only could accept a trade to 4 teams on his list. And he actually ended up apparently waiving that list to go to St. Louis. So I do know that the Ducks had worked with him for a period of months, but my question would be, just because you're working with him, did you field the full array of the field, if that makes any sense? Did you get every team that was interested to submit their offers and or interest? Yeah. I'm not convinced that was the case, which I think then obviously helps dampen the return. But the way Cam Fowler had played, I'm not entirely shocked that that's the case, a second round pick plus, but it is a little bit surprising that it happened in December, right before the holidays, where you could have possibly gotten to a point in late February where it was like, this guy's kind of up for auction.
Yeah, and I wonder,
and they ate salary too, like to eat 2.5 out of the 6.5. I mean, it's kind of hard for St. Louis to lose that trade in the end. But I also think you need to ask real questions about St. Louis and their blue line and what exactly they're doing there.
No, very valid. And the thing about Fowler, this to me will be great, because you're right. His numbers, his analytical numbers do not look good at all. How much of that is him? How much of that is being on a losing organization, where losing can just wear you down over time? And so this will be a great test. Are the analytics showing an accurate evaluation of Cam Fowler, or are they not considering emotional toll? Are they not considering quality of teammates? Many other factors involved. And that's what we'll see. But you're right. You look at St. Louis and their decor, and they've got lots of guys signed. Now, obviously, Krug's not playing this year, and who knows, where he'll be at. But Falk, Krug, Cam Fowler, Nick Leddy, like, my goodness, they got a lot of guys
who are old.
Now, Parayko's different because he's 6'6", right? And Broberg's the other guy, but it is kind of fascinating to see what they're going to do with their decor.
But Parayko's already 31, and he's signed for 5 more years.
Yeah.
Philip Broberg's the only guy in that group that's younger.
Who's younger? Yeah, no, I agree. But I meant Broberg. I mean, Parayko's at least huge. Like Falk, Krug, Nick Leddy, Cam Fowler, they're all the same guys, just in different names, really. They're all very similar stature, puck movers, all that. Like Nick Leddy's probably the best pure defender of the group, but that's what I mean. Like they're all you got a lot of the same guy there, don't you?
Yeah, but at the same time, I would argue, like, as funny as it is that we're in agreement saying it's probably not ideal, if someone said you can bring in Cam Fowler, they'll retain money to make it work, and you only have to give up a second.
Yes.
I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's worth the risk. I agree, because you know what? Now this gives you more opportunity to move some of the other guys who, whether it's this year or maybe next year, you know what? And then even if you retain, depending on where they're at, yeah. But that's why I thought it was twofold. A, I'm surprised a little bit it was the Blues, although they're obviously trying to feel like, hey, we can get in the mix. And then B, Anaheim, was there that low of interest in Cam Fowler at this stage that they had to retain that much? Was it close to 38% or something, and only get a second rounder and, get a young prospect?
No, he's playing in the ECHL.
That's why it's just, so it's not a young prospect who's like a long shot. It's almost like a roster player just to get rid of the 50.
Right. And that's, I think.
But you also gave up a fourth, did you not?
But there was a fourth swap. So
right. Oh, is it fourth swap? I didn't see the extra pick. Okay. Yeah,
so,
I'm still surprised by it.
Yeah, I look, it is just interesting in terms of timing. And I think to read into it a little bit more, it kind of felt like Fowler had been asking for a change of scenery. And it's just interesting to see it granted right now. 9 games away from 1,000, 9 days away from Christmas. Like, it's It's a lot happening at once to pull the trigger at this exact moment in time.
Yeah, fair point. And like Corey Perry, just shy of 1,000 games for the Ducks, so that won't happen.
So it just remains Ryan Getzlaf, the only one to do 1,000 all in a Ducks uniform. And maybe there won't be anyone else, at least not for a long while.
No,
it's amazing how long Cam Fowler was there.
Yeah, well, basically since he was drafted in 2010, right? Came in right as a young guy.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Let's bring in Ty Yaremchuk now.
All right, boys, ready to go with a new edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app, use the promo code NATION to get in on a huge range of markets. Let me start with an easy one here. I always like doing this whenever you guys break down a trade. The team that you're looking at to be the next to make a deal is blank, Frank.
I would put my money on the Sabres.
Okay. Greg's?
Well, I don't want to agree, although that's a very good pick. So I will go. I'm going to go off the board. I'm going to say the Preds.
Yeah, that's one that would be overdue, but it would certainly make sense. They're still sitting tied with the Hawks, dead last in the Western Conference. One team that's been on a pretty nice run as of late, 3 wins in a row for the Ottawa Senators. And it's actually interesting to look. If they were to win their 2 games in hand, they would jump ahead of the Boston Bruins. But I wanted to ask you guys, the Ottawa Senators have a blank % chance of making the playoffs, Greg's.
Well, I actually picked them as a playoff team to start. So you know what? They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. They got some really good goaltending over the weekend. That was fantastic for them. So that helps. And Allmark played in both, just due to Forsberg getting hurt in warm up. I would say like 48% chance. Like, cause they're like Boston had their little new coach blip, and man, they've kind of come down a little bit here. So I think it'll be a battle for sure, but they're still a little slight underdog for me.
Frank?
The first number that popped into my head was 52%. So not far off from Jay's 48. But while you were talking, I pulled up the playoff chances today on hockeyviz.com, who I think has the best model. And you want to hear something fascinating? They have the Rangers as having a lower playoff chance this year than the Penguins.
Whoa.
Which now is that must be they're looking at the remaining schedule, obviously, right?
No, that does not factor in, I don't think.
So it's just all about their well, the Pens create a ton of chances offensively. 5-on-5.
It's heavily weighted on the way that they play. Okay. Like what and especially what the last 2 weeks have done for them. So the other interesting thing is,
where are the Senators at?
He has the Senators at 50.5.
Okay, so
he has, but here's the other thing. Tyler, you mentioned them climbing over Boston. He has the Sens ahead of the Bruins. He has the Bruins at 41.
And where are the Penguins?
37.
And the Rangers?
30.3.
Oh, wow, that seems low. Crazy.
So basically the 6 firm playoff teams in the East, Washington, New Jersey, Carolina, Florida, Toronto, and Tampa Bay, all north of 87%.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Sens, who are the only other team north of 50, which means they're projecting essentially a dogfight for the 7th and 8th spots.
All right. Interesting.
Does that make it tempting for Steve Staios to maybe look at adding something here?
I mean, it would for me. If I think that I've got a good nucleus, even if they're not a cup contender and he's a believer in that, getting in and just getting that experience and getting a taste of it will be humongous for that group. Just confidence alone.
Getting Zub back, and if that will help them. The fact that they've been able to play this well without one of their top 4D, that's a good sign. And so when he comes back, I think that will help them. But you're bang on. Like that group of Tkachuk and Batherson and Stützle and, Norris, Shabbat, go down the list, Sanderson, they want to experience some playoffs for sure. Like even if they don't have success, it's just you can talk all you want about you think the intensity's higher until you get there. Plus, as a management group, Frank,
You learn a lot.
You can learn a lot. You can overvalue sometimes, overrate it one bad playoff, right? Ask the Oilers about when Peter Chiarelli, they threw Jordan Eberle away because of one bad playoff, and then all he did every other playoff was produce. So the history of guys being meh in their first playoffs is actually a lot, because it's tough. Like, it is such a increase in intensity and pace and everything. It's hard to adjust to, so they need it.
I know we've talked a ton of Rangers, but that's the first thing I come back to is it seemed like the Rangers convinced themselves this summer after losing in the conference final to Florida that they just had a team that wasn't good enough to win. And I wonder if that was a general overreaction.
Yeah.
Just quickly on the Sens, our friends at Bet365 do have updated odds to make the playoffs, and you guys were pretty much bang on. They have the Sens at -110 on either side, so implied odds of 50-50 on them making the playoffs this year. It's interesting, the Sens have worse odds than the Rangers, who are -145 to make it in, which means you get them at +115 to miss, which is a little bit tempting considering the way things are going right now. Next one I got for you guys. Let's go out west a little bit here and talk about the top of the Western Conference. The Oilers are heating up. The Golden Knights are still playing some pretty good hockey as of late. But I wanted to ask you guys, if I gave you two teams, the two teams with the best shot of making it out of the West right now are blank and blank. And I want to compare your answers to what our friends at Bet365 had. But if you had to power rank the top two, Greg's, who would you have at 1 and 2?
Ooh. Out of the West, I will say, well, I don't like my answer because they're both in the same division, but I'm going to go Edmonton and Vegas.
Congratulations, sir, on cutting off half of yourself.
What do you got, Frank?
I would say Edmonton and Colorado.
Ooh, interesting. So Bet365 does have Edmonton at the number 1 spot, and by a pretty healthy margin. They're +325. Second on the list is actually Dallas at +550. Colorado's third, +600. Winnipeg's fourth, +750. Greg's, the Golden Knights are fifth on the list at +800. Is Vegas getting undervalued a little bit here?
Oh, I would take that just for the value right now. Oof, I like that a lot. Like, they would be hard pressed. Like, if Vegas meets LA in the first round, I think that's a real tough matchup. I think like LA's got to hope they don't play Edmonton because they can't match up against them. But Vegas, I think, just stylistically, big, kind of plays similar. That would work. Dallas to me is like, Frank's talked a lot about Jason Robertson, man. He's been bang on. Like, where is he? And Sagan's gone for a long time. Like, Dallas they don't look as good to me right now as they were last year.
I also think they've just done it before and have done it really consistently, that they're probably in just a little bit of a malaise and will snap out of it. And I look at all those things that, like, you can view it negatively if you want. I look at all those things as a positive. Is Jason Robertson going to play this bad all season long? Probably not. Is Tyler Seguin, are you going to trade for a replacement for him using all of his $9 million in cap space? Probably. I just think same thing with Colorado. Like, are they going to have money to spend with Gabe Landeskog depending on when they get an answer? Probably.
There was no what about where are the Wild at?
The Wild were 6th on the list, +850.
But we did this last week, and we did did our
I didn't have them in the top 5 in the league, but
so I wanted to unpack that a little bit more because I thought about that a lot this weekend. Why do we not like the Wild?
Well, it's not that I don't like them. I just said I didn't have them in top 5 in the league. I definitely have them top 5.
Well,
in the
when they're
West.
leading the entire league, I think it's fair to say then at that point that you don't like them.
I don't love their forward depth.
Yeah, I don't think that after Kaprizov, I'm worried about, like, to go deep in the playoffs, you need multiple big dogs. And I don't know if they have a second big dog.
Like
I like Matt Boldy, but he's not like you look at Florida had Barkov and obviously Rantanen and McKinnon and Makar, and Edmonton went to the final with their guys, Jack Eichel and Stone, and like they have big guys. Like after Kaprizov, who's the next guy that you're really confident is going to step up continually offensively for Minnesota? Like, is Rossi there yet? Is Boldy there yet?
Yeah, Boldy's pretty close, man. See, that's why I'm not as because I'm a
You think
Boldy
Boldy's close?
believer.
I don't know.
You
We'll see.
like tell me what part about Boldy's game isn't close.
No, I like his game. I just don't put him in the big dog category.
What's
He's
it going
not
to take
Kachuk.
for you to do that?
Well, he's got to score. He's going to have to. I think he's got to be a little bit more consistent still, and that's
What do you
okay. He's a
mean?
young player.
He's on pace for like 78 points.
Yeah, the two big dogs are like 90+ guys, right? Like,
Okay.
do you put him in the Kachuk category? Yes or no?
It's not there
No,
yet.
come on. How many people are in the Kachuk's an 800-pound gorilla? There's no one else even in his category.
But
No.
if you look at the teams that go there, McDavid,
That is nonsensical. Okay.
right? Eichel, Stone. Do you think he's Mark Stone when Mark Stone's healthy? I don't think he's there yet. Like, Mark Stone is just an absolute beast when he's in the playoffs and he's healthy. Like, he plays hard every shift. That's what I mean.
But okay, but look at the constant progression though. Boldy 63 points, then 69 in 6 fewer games. This year on track for 78. Every year there's progress. My concern would be, can they continue to get the goaltending that they've gotten from Philip Gustafsson on a consistent basis, especially now that he's hurt? Upper body injury.
Yeah, he was playing
It doesn't
a lot.
sound like it's going to be a long time, but nonetheless, his save percentage and the few goals that he's allowed probably also comes in conjunction with how well they've defended. But they're challenged now. Middleton is out. Brodin has been out and is working his way back. And Gustafsson is now out. So, like, they're probably going to hit a rough patch for the next few weeks. And I guess we'll find out the true mettle of the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, that's fair. Kirill Kaprizov, by the way, continues to widen his lead in the Hart Trophy race over at Bet365. He's now plus 120 to win the MVP this year. That is a wrap, boys, on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365.
Hey, let's get to the second half of the pod, brought to you by Fountain Tire, where they specialize in tire and auto service, so you don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service, because at Fountain Tire, you'll get both. They'll treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle. If you need new tires or maybe your engine has a little rattle, stop in at Fountain Tire and they'll sort you out. As always, Fountain Tire offers top quality tires and products from brands like Goodyear. Stop in at Fountain Tire, make an appointment. Check out fountaintire.com. Now, looking, Frank, we'll get into a few other teams, but quickly, the scoring race. Ty just kind of teased it about Kaprizov, like Nathan McKinnon, Kaprizov, Rantanen, Kucherov, Draisaitl, McDavid, like all these guys. Jesper Bratt had a great week as well. Like, we're seeing the top guys all really just continued. It's almost like, it's a heavyweight bout among 6 different guys, and they're counterpunching all over the place. 6-point games, 5-point games, 4-3, 4-3. Like, if you love the top end guys dominating, it's been fun to watch here the last few weeks.
We figured that would be coming at a certain point, right?
Yeah. Wow. It's being like, honestly, if you had to pick, and let's take out McDavid, because I think it's sometimes easy to say, oh, McDavid. So who are the other guys that you like for sure to win the Art Ross right now? And then the Rocket.
Well, I like Draisaitl to win the Rocket, and part of it's been pointed out by Tyler, who mentioned that Draisaitl is typically around 45% of his goals on the power play. And he's, I think, when I looked late last week after Thursday night's game, he was at 21%. So there's probably going to be an explosion of power play goals from him, just math-wise, 4 of his 22. And that's Rocket. That would be my guy. But I don't like how does anyone count out Nathan? Like, when he just said that Kirill Kaprizov widened his Hart Trophy race lead on Bet365, I'm like, McKinnon, come on. McKinnon's leading the league and he's got no signs of slowing down.
True, but if you go by the Rantanen has 4 less points than McKinnon. right? They're on the same
but
team.
you're also dealing with the incumbent, which has powerful voting powers.
No. Well, if you were looking at it from a heart race,
but you wait a second. You made that point though about Rantanen. Oh, well, he also has him who's pretty close. It didn't impact the voting last year when McKinnon had 42 goals and 104 points. So I don't know why it would this year.
Well, fair, but you could argue by the rule of the law. Like I thought Kucherov, I would have had Kucherov, but I think this year, if you look at not just points and you look at all the other underlying numbers, you can make a strong argument Draisaitl for Hart just as much as you do for the Art Ross. Look at his 5-on-5 numbers. And then look at his wingers. Look at who McKinnon plays regularly with, right? Draisaitl doesn't play very much with McDavid. He's playing with Podkolzin and it was Arvidsson. Now it's Kapanen. Like if you look at his wingers compared, like that's why Kaprizov, I think, he's got good line mates, but he doesn't have a Rantanen. And when to me, if you're looking at quality of line mates, I think that's something that should come into play, right? Like Jack Eichel's another guy who could get some votes in Vegas for the wording of it, which I don't love it. I wish we'd just go by best player, and then it would be a much more fun conversation. But when you go to your team, then you have to look at the other aspects of your team.
Well, but why don't you like the wording of it? Because we have a separate award that is most outstanding player.
Well, yeah, they do. Yeah, the Ted Lindsay, that's fair. But they don't always get that one right either, funny enough. But I guess if you have it both, that's fine. And you're right.
They don't get it right. If that's who they're voting for, then that's who they get. It's like saying, okay, well, let's not go there. But
Gretzky
if
scored
if that's who the electorate voted for, that's who the right person is. Like,
well,
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Fine. So for most valuable to their team, I can see why Kaprizov is higher based on how many way more points he has than anybody else in his team. He has more goals. And that's the other thing. Like he's got now it's 9 more goals than McKinnon. McKinnon has 3 more points, but Kaprizov's played 2 or fewer games. Like Kaprizov actually has a higher points per game right now. He scored more goals. He's got a way better goal for differential 5-on-5. I can see why Kaprizov right now today at just after the 35% mark of the season is leading.
All I'm saying is McKinnon at plus 650 on the Hart on Bet365 is insane value for the incumbent who's leading the league in scoring.
What's Kucherov at? Because
here's the funny thing. I voted for Kucherov last year, number 1. Me
too.
It's interesting that we both worked our way into that position.
Yeah. But look at Kucherov this year. He's got 1.77 points per game. He's playing unreal. Right? He's 4 points back, but he got injured and Tampa's played the fewest games in the league. So he'll catch up. Like, that's why I think it's a great race, right? Kucherov's heating up. McKinnon's great. Rantanen, Kaprizov, Draisaitl, McDavid. No one count him out. Like, I think this might be one of the tighter races with multiple guys. Like last year was pretty good with 2, and then McDavid obviously didn't play the last few games of the season, so he took himself out of it. But I could see 5 guys, Frank, within 5, 6, 7 points here when we get into the final week of the season.
I could see it.
Oh, it'd be great. So plus 700 for Kucherov.
Mm-hmm.
Guys leading the league in points per game right now. That's not a bad one either.
No.
Bet365. One team we haven't talked about a lot, but we started off some of the bad, maybe some negative stories. What about the New Jersey Devils? Just continue to play solid hockey, Frank. What do you make of the Devils? And what do you think Tom Fitzgerald's looking at as an addition between now and the deadline?
I think it's probably still a little bit early to have the question about the addition. I think what's really interesting about the Devils so far, it's been a little bit of a mind bender looking at the standings because they started in Europe and played so many more games than teams to start. That it's, you look at the standings, you go, oh, the Caps have 44 points and the Devils have 43. They're really close. They're just behind them in second place, but they've also played 4 more games. So I always remind everyone, sort by points percentage, wink, wink, in the
Well,
first
they're
half.
still second best in the East.
Okay. But what I'm saying is what's fascinating about the Devils' start to the year is that for the most part, like they can score. They've defended way better. And I would still argue that this team really hasn't quite scratched the surface yet of what they could be. I think they could be so much more. And that's the part that's really exciting if you're Tom Fitzgerald. The other part, Simone Nemeth is playing in the AHL and Seamus Casey is playing in the AHL. This team brought in some really important pieces. Brendan Dillon has been great. Kovacevic has been an unreal pickup for a fifth round pick. And they're in a really, really envious position with what they've got on offer for the next few years. I think the Devils are just entering into an 8-year window where they are going to be contending for a cup. 8 years, they're going to be able to sustain this.
Well, the biggest difference, they're defending better because they got more experience on their back end this year, right? That's why I wasn't all in love with the Devils. I was like, guys, you can't. Youth doesn't win very often. You can have one guy maybe.
It's not youth, or sorry, it's not the experience. To me, it's the commitment to defend. Brett Pesce is really proud to defend.
Yeah. But he also knows how to do it, don't you think?
Yes. Brendan Dillon, defense first, right? So then all of a sudden that rubs off on Luke Hughes, who wants to do more defending. Even in an odd way, Dougie Hamilton, who is a vet, he starts defending a little bit better. I just think it's contagious when you bring guys like that in, and it's not so much the experience factor as it is how they view and think about the game that other people see through that lens.
Yeah, no, the Devils, I like their team. I think they like, same with Washington, right? Like the Capitals, no one had the Capitals to be the number one team in the East right now. No one, right? Never mind the East, one of the best teams in the entire NHL. No one had it. And Ovi's off to an unreal start. Then he's out, and they haven't missed a beat. Strome's playing great. Their goaltending's good. Chikrin's come in. Their defense is better. Like everything about it. They're getting quality contributions up and down the lineup. Young Connor McMichael's had a really good season, although he hasn't scored in quite a while. But still, I look at the Caps, Frank, and they're a great example of they kept their star guys and old guys, and they've been able to kind of retool and bring in some younger guys. Then bring in, and not always younger like 21 or 2, which they have a few of, but they went younger 26, 27. You know, like you replace Backstrom with Strome. You don't go right to the young kid. You know, you go to a guy, a little bit of a reclamation project. And you talked about it. They're the only team who offered him that deal. And that has worked out incredibly well for them. But like you look at Washington's makeup now, that it's not like, when Ovi leaves, they're suddenly going in full on rebuild. Right? Like
how did they convince Alexei Protas to sign that contract? 5 years times 3.38.
What an absolute. I saw that kid when he was 17 years old in Prince Albert when they won the Western Hockey League. And my nephew was playing on that team. And Protas, he was so big, Frank, at that time, and raw. But just so strong. And I remember talking to a few scouts. I'm like, you watch this kid. Like, and Mark Habshide, they loved his work ethic, and it's a big adjustment sometimes when you come over to North America into, small town PA, and they were a good team. They had lots of players, and I think he learned from a guy like Kelly, who was just a relentless hard worker. But you saw his skill. And I said, once he fills into his body, and now you're starting to see it at the NHL level. Like you're right, Frank. He is going to be, as you like to say, a bargoon for a long time.
I agree. I just the way that he's burst onto this year, and you got to give some love to Connor McMichael too.
Yes,
because he's blossomed into. I mean, this year he's been close to a point per game. But let's say he levels off just for the time being at 65 points. You got another year of him at 2.1 million. Then you're going to need to pay him. But this is exactly the type of progression that you want to see from McMichael, from Protas. Like they've gotten those in real time. I know it's taken a few years and there were some down years, kind of because they handed those guys the reins, but Carberry and his attention to detail has been huge. And I don't think you can overestimate the changes that they made on their back end. Chychrun, Matt Roy, like bringing in
look at that
those
Sundin trade has worked out incredibly well for them.
Yeah, but bringing in
Sandin,
those two guys, changing out 2 of your top 6, 1/3 of your defense is a huge, huge change. And they are way better for it. So the goaltending has helped too. Like, I think the Caps are a good all-around team. I really do. And I honestly really enjoyed my conversation with Dylan Strome. Like, encourage you to check it out. It dropped on Frankly Speaking on Friday. It's a fascinating story. On pace for 105 points. Like, it's a powerful lesson in confidence.
Like, they got 8 guys already with 20 points. And I got to look around the league how many other teams have that. Like, you got Strome playing great. And that's with Ovi missing as much time as he's missed, right? Like, he had 25 points in 18 games, including 15 goals, for goodness sakes. Like, you get him back in. And the thing is, when Ovi comes back, Frank, like, and I like what Wayne Gretzky said. He might get nervous, once he gets to 890, like those last 5 goals. Oh, my God. But when he comes back here, he is going to be so juiced up. And so are his teammates. Who doesn't want to be a part of that chase, right? Like, that's like the greatest thing ever for that team, that he goes away. Now he comes back. He's rejuvenated. The team's playing well. And now they get to have the chase in the second half. Like, I don't see a real setback coming for the Caps.
He's going to be a human missile.
Oh, yeah. It'll be
maybe the wrong phrase to use on the East Coast today with all these drones, but yeah.
Was it Droneville over there going on right now?
Do you not watch the news?
But yeah, you know what?
There's been dozens and dozens of drones that have been spotted in our area for weeks now that no one can pinpoint where they come from. And they're too big to be civilian drones. They're way more than that. And they're all coordinated. It's been very odd. And there's been tons of investigations. No one knows exactly where they're coming from. So
sounds like a 90s movie coming to real life fruition.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous. And then Megan, my wife, said this morning, she goes, do you want to go to Kansas for Christmas? Like, should we go to the middle of the country where no one wants to do with anything there? So anyway, yeah, it's been fun over here.
Oh, geez. Well, stay safe from the drones, Frankie. That was a spirited pod. I love it. Brought to you by Bet365 and Fountain Tire. We will chat. And then over the Christmas and New Year's, we're going to have 1 pod a week. But so this week we'll have 2, and then we'll have 1 because like you listeners, everybody wants a little bit more time with the fam. So we will chat later this week.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.